Righty. All right, let's kick off here. Looks like we got a quorum. So thanks everyone for joining. I'm Alex Kemp. I'm a VP of Marketing and Business Development here at ShipHawk, and I have the unique pleasure of being the host for today's session. And we're going to talk more about stockouts, excess inventory, late shipments, and they don't just hurt your margins, they damage your customer experience and your reputation. So we are joined today by Fellers. They are a leading distributor of graphics and signage, and they knew these challenges all too well. They added NetSuite a few years ago, and then they added Netstock on top of that for smarter inventory planning, and ShipHawk for faster, more accurate fulfillment. All of that ultimately led to a transformation of their entire order lifecycle and supply chain, and really optimizing their stock levels, their warehouse and shipping processes. So we're going to dive into a lot more. Before we jump into a lot more detail, I do just want to start with some housekeeping, and I want to just share a few notes here. First thing, we're going to record this session for if you have to drop early or if you want to share it with any colleagues. If you have questions and you want to get more from Samir or Justin that are joining me today, drop those into the Q&A box. And then lastly, tell us what you think. We're always open to your feedback, and we want to make this as valuable as possible for you so you can join future webinars as well. One other quick housekeeping note too, ShipHawk is giving away a free trip to SuiteWorld, and SuiteWorld is just under 2 months away. This is NetSuite's big event. So scan that QR code to learn more about how to enter that contest, and we look forward to seeing you at SuiteWorld in October. So with that, already introduced myself, Alex Kemp. I'm excited to be joined by two individuals. We have Samir from Fellers and Justin from Netstock. So I'm going to turn it over to both of them to introduce themselves, starting with Samir there. So Samir, over to you.
Thanks, Alex. My name is Samir Afsar. I'm the CIO of Fellers. Have been joined Fellers in 2022 and working on kind of the digital transformation of taking the signing graphics company that started in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to a well-oiled machine.
Excellent. Excellent. Justin, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Thanks, Samir. Glad to be here. My name is Justin Dudley. I'm a solution consultant with Netstock. Been with that organization for about a year now. Before coming on board with Netstock, I was actually a user of the solution in my role as VP of Global Logistics and Supply Chain, managing inventory with previous organizations, and have about a dozen or more years of experience in those roles.
So you've lived both sides of this journey then, sounds like, Justin.
I've lived both sides of the journey, seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. So good to be here.
Excellent. All right, so let's talk about the agenda, how we're going to spend the next few minutes together, and we're really going to unpack Fellers' journey here. So we're going to be focused on Fellers' story, but really the supported solutions with Netstock, ShipHawk, and NetSuite. And we're going to break down the solutions, separately. We're going to talk about Netstock, we're going to talk about ShipHawk, we're going to talk about Fellers. I think one thing that's worth noting right off the bat, though, is these solutions really complement each other. To borrow the cliche, it's this 1 + 1 + 1 = 4. And what I mean by that is it's really better planning leads to better inventory management, leads to better fulfillment. They're all part of this orchestra that's working in tandem and together. So we're going to break into separate sections. We're going to talk about NetSuite, we're going to talk about Netstock, we're going to talk about ShipHawk, and Fellers' story and related to those. But just a note, and we're going to start with first Fellers and their story. Then we're talking about the pain points that Fellers was facing prior to adopting these solutions, and then the process of choosing the right solutions. There's a lot of solutions out there. There are a lot of different things. How did Fellers land on these two solutions alongside NetSuite? Then we're going to wrap with key benefits, and of course, no project ever goes perfect. So what were those key lessons learned, especially for Samir and the Fellers team? So that is our agenda for the day. And with that, I want to turn it over to Samir to talk a little bit more about Fellers and their story, and really go through their products, their markets, their history, their supply chain, their geographical footprint. So Samir, over to you.
Thanks. Yeah. So Fellers was started by Frank Fellers back in 1986 as a print shop, and then eventually he realized that he needed to create a better method on getting print supplies. So Fellers eventually became the leading supplier of signing graphics films. We primarily focus on warehouse distribution and next day delivery of vinyl films for signing graphics, automotive color change, window tinting, along with building and architecture, things like safety film and anti-graffiti film. So when Frank created the organization, his mantra was be the local neighborhood distributor. Like, yes, we're at a national level, but we want to be the local person, like down the street, go to Fellers and pick up your supplies, and hence had a warehouse in every single metropolitan area. Since then we've kind of rationalized it a bit. We went from a crazy amount of warehouses down to about 40 warehouses, which still is pretty, across the country is still pretty complex. In order to meet kind of our demand, our service levels of delivering product within 1 day. So Alex, when we look at the next slide, is our warehouse footprint. So we were thinking about, hey, how do we get a system to meet our service level, especially our mantra of service and selection, speed, service, and selection. Like, how do we manage our inventory? How do we manage our customer service levels along with this complex footprint? So we knew we were originally on an AS400 system, then green screen. We moved over to NetSuite as our system of record, but we knew that NetSuite, yes, it's great for a one-size-fits-all, but there were specific aspects that we needed to enhance, either on the NetSuite side or get a third-party solution to address our needs.
Excellent. So Frank really set you up for some challenges by saying we want to be the local, and have all these warehouses all over, and you're saying you shrunk down to 40 warehouses. That's still
still a lot. Yes.
Excellent. Yeah. Samir, during the prep of this webinar, you mentioned, NetSuite is the system of record, but their supply chain and execution weren't deep enough for that complexity. Can you go through, starting out with Netstock specifically, can you go through what were some of those challenges or pain points specific to inventory planning and optimization?
Yeah. So when you're thinking about the warehouse footprint and the item complexity, so yes, you have one product for color change, but you have to carry all the colors, right? You do have to carry black, white, orange. I mean, you're talking about like almost 40 to 50 colors per item. And so that really adds up. And so, yes, you're talking about like, yeah, we have like 100 different products, but when you add all the colors, now you're talking about tens of thousands of products and SKUs. And so it's very challenging to have every SKU at every warehouse in order to meet all the demands of our customers. And then you're fighting, hey, there's a lot of money tied up into inventory. So cash on, do we have cash on hand, or is most of our cash tied up in inventory? And so the supply chain team had this very complex problem of like, how do we make sure we reduce our inventory, keep our service levels up, and still have the right product in the right place? And so with all those different type of complexities, we knew we needed a pretty complex tool that was comprehensive enough to meet what our supply chain was asking for. Because the worst thing you can have is a stock out. So someone calls in and says, hey, can I get it by tomorrow at the warehouse? No, we can ship it from XYZ warehouse. We would probably lose that sale because our customers demand kind of next day delivery. So yes, we might not have a stock out nationally, but if it's not getting to them within 1 day, we most likely will lose that sale.
Excellent. That's a unique challenge for sure. Justin, I'm going to call on you next, actually, from your perspective. How typical are the challenges that Samir and Fellers are facing, and what are the typical challenges that you see customers turn to NetStock for?
Yeah, thanks. So, obviously the challenges that they were experiencing is not something that's new to NetStock. It's something that we see on a regular basis, and ultimately what we typically see can be boiled down into more or less 3 different categories. Some come in with one or two, or even all of them. But one of those might be that their current state of planning is far too manual. They're exporting reports out of the ERP and trying to manage through the output of those reports, or they're working within spreadsheets. And we've seen spreadsheets that are just, egregiously huge and very complex. And you see about 80 different colors and all the different cells. But regardless, the process is cumbersome, it's slow, and it's not very accurate. Another that we see quite often is that their current state yield, or the results that they're getting from those processes, are not very accurate. They're not where they want them to be. Most often you're going to see not enough inventory with the important items, with that important category, or they've got way too much in the wrong area, and there's just not the right balance of their capital in inventory. And then ultimately, or lastly, they're at a point of rapid growth or size, and it's time to invest in technology that's able to support and scale and grow with the organization, such as you can see with Fellers, a very large organization, very complex supply chain. Having a tool that's able to operate at those levels and continue to scale with them is definitely a solution that Netstock is able to offer. And so within all of those, we're going to bring in some improved forecast accuracy, definitely a reduction in time and planning and ordering, and a reduction in inventory holding and getting those proper allocations so that we can improve those fill rates or service levels. As Samir was mentioning, those are very, very important. Customers, they're looking for what they want right now, and within a day. And if they don't have it, the loyalty is not there, they're moving on.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Okay, so that's the supply chain planning side, the upstream side of it. Samir, now let's talk about the execution side. The challenges you're facing prior to ShipHawk specifically. So can you go through a little more about your warehouse and fulfillment process? What did it look like before ShipHawk, and what were those challenges that really led you to start looking for a potential solution?
Yeah, on the ShipHawk side, there's two different challenges. So on the shipping side, it wasn't necessarily a challenge. It's just like how do we become more efficient? So we were manually shipping products prior to NetSuite and ShipHawk, but you have to think of volume. Like let's say even if it takes like 5 to 10 seconds per package, I mean, we're talking about hundreds of packages per day, thousands of packages per week per warehouse. So even saving like 5 seconds per shipment, I mean, added up to a significant amount of labor hours per week of savings. And then we wanted something holistic. Like we didn't want to choose, okay, we're using this for parcel, this for, our e-commerce, this for LTL, like we want, and then customer service, you quote out of this system, because all those can be different eventually. And then just maintaining that. So we wanted a one-stop solution to say, hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish with all of our shipping needs. And so LTL was, again, very manual. Hey, can you do this? Here's what we're doing. Email back, email, just constant emails of trying to get quotes. And so while we were looking at different shipping solutions, we needed something that met parcel, LTL, FTL, in an integration with NetSuite, integration with our e-commerce on Shopify, and can handle 40 warehouses. So it was very challenging to look in the market and try to find providers in that way. And then on the flip side, so that takes care of the transportation side. On the warehouse management side, we just needed something that helped our warehouse team not have to think, right? If they're saying, okay, where's this product? And if they stop and they're taken away from their day-to-day process, I mean, that adds up. So we don't, we're slower. We can't get as many shipments out. We're not meeting our service levels. So we needed something very easy for our warehouse team to pick product, ship product, and get it out the door without having too many exceptions or stops.
Excellent. Because manual process is it's going to slow down the whole thing. It's just going to lead to a grinding halt of the operation. And that's great context. And I think we really see it with a lot of other ShipHawk customers. It's really about the speed and accuracy. And to your point, if you can improve by 5 seconds or 10 seconds across one order, yeah, if you're doing 5 orders per day, it's not going to make a big impact. If you're doing 500, 5,000 orders per day, that is a massive impact, and really trying to remove those manual decision points out of the warehouse workers' hands, really trying to make their job easier in a lot of ways.
Yeah, sorry. And also on the warehouse side, I mean, you get new warehouse associates all the time. And so if it's a very manual process, that training takes weeks to try to figure out, hey, where's my product? How do I do this? I mean, if it's system driven, then it's like, hey, follow the system, follow your scanner. But if it's like, okay, you need to find where the product is, and then you have to use this for this, this for this, this for this. Again, having that many decision points really slows down bringing on new associates into your warehouse. Makes
sense. You guys are hiring probably more than a few warehouse associates per week, per day, per month.
Yes.
So across those 40 is excellent. Okay. Okay, I think that's a great level set on just the issues and what were the pain points before NetSuite and ShipHawk. So I'm going to ask you, Samir, to kind of rewind back, and now you're coming to that recognition of the issues and pain points. Now you're actually looking at different solutions. What were some of the key requirements for a technology that were allowing you to optimize some of these issues or challenges you were having, and especially you as the CIO at Fellers trying to make all this technology fit together and work in tandem.
Yeah, so while looking at technology solutions or decision making, kind of look at two different paths. Do I want best of breed? Do I want the application that's the best out there, Gartner, upper quadrant, or do I choose ecosystem? You kind of want a balance of both, ultimately. But the ecosystem, hey, do I want to get something that's more plug and play, so I don't have to create an integration, and maintain less integrations, and have someone like just in charge of integration. So when you're thinking about that, and then you're thinking about, okay, how are my users going to uptake this? So this might have all the best features and functions, but if I'm using only like 5% and everything else is very confusing, then I'm not getting my, the full value of that application. So we specifically wanted the ecosystems. Anything we went down the NetSuite path, we wanted all of our bolt-on solutions to be integrated within NetSuite and not have to create a whole bunch of integration.
Excellent, excellent. And specifically for NetStock, what were some of the key decision criteria for selecting? Obviously, it's got to solve the challenges, but what was in the back of your mind as far as why you selected NetStock essentially?
For NetSuite, so we did have an ERP system, a legacy ERP system that it wasn't a big bang. So we went with, a small portion of our business, but the supply chain team, instead of working out of two, now, you're working out of NetSuite, now you're working out of a legacy ERP. How do you bring all that together? It's still the same 40 warehouses, now two different systems. So we wanted a system where it was, yes, part of the NetSuite ecosystem, but also ERP agnostic. So we were just pumping in data from our legacy system combined with our NetSuite to give the supply chain team exactly kind of the supply functions that they were looking for. Secondly, we also didn't want to load a whole bunch of data into NetSuite. So when you're thinking about data migration and supply chain planning, the more data, the more historical data for seasonality, for accuracy, for different SKU and demand levels, you want more history. You want as much history as possible. But when you're trying to do an implementation and loading that much history, it just slows down your implementation. You have more risk of closing out each month properly from a sales order perspective. So we wanted to avoid that. NetStock was a great solution for both. So now we were pumping in data from our legacy ERP system, and we didn't have to load that data into NetSuite. So it was allowed us to quickly address our supply chain needs with a technology solution, and all the recommend.
Oh, Samir, I think we're losing you a little bit. Justin, are you losing him too?
You have,
Yeah, just a bit.
based off of all the historical data. Am I back?
I think so. I think so. Samir, I think that I heard about some crazy weather in Chicago over the last few days, so hopefully it's not impacting you too much. I think you're back now. Can you hear us?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Excellent. Okay. And then and I think that's great context too. And it's an interesting pain point too. You have all this historical data and you want it, you need it, but you don't want to put it in the new ERP. So I imagine some other companies, especially making that transition, that's probably a pretty common pain point. So I think that's super important. From a ShipHawk perspective, I think you already mentioned, the different solutions you were looking at. Can you go into a little more criteria on why you ended up selecting ShipHawk? Obviously, it met the functional too, but what were some of those other key decision criteria?
Yeah, we started with TMS. We wanted a solution that supported 40 warehouses, and multiple carriers. And so we use the large carriers today. We wanted to choose a solution that helped us or automatically chose the quickest and cheapest option from a shipping perspective, so the associate didn't have to think. They didn't have to look at, oh, do I need to get it at 1 day, 2 day? Here's the cost. Do I have to balance that? Again, took that thought process out from the associate and said, hey, here's quickest and fastest, quickest and cheapest. Boom, let's print out a shipping label. So we start off with TMS. We eventually found out, hey, we want to our carriers charging us too much, or are they following the rates? Are they, getting us to our promised service levels? So then we added audit ShipHawk audit to help, now to help balance what we were doing from a TMS perspective. Eventually, we started off with NetSuite's warehouse management, kind of the out of the box warehouse management, and it's a great solution for a lot of organizations. It just didn't meet some of our needs, and so we pivoted from NetSuite's warehouse management to ShipHawk's warehouse management because of our specific needs, especially like cutting some of these vinyl films and getting them out the door. And now are in the implementation phase of rolling out the warehouse management to all 40 warehouses. So we've been kind of growing, and it's been a great journey. We started off small with ShipHawk, and then have been investing more because they're not just a great vendor, but they've been growing with us and have been a great partner of ours.
Excellent. Still work in process too on the WMS side, I know. How many warehouses have gone live now? I think I've been seeing some of the warehouse go lives over time.
Yeah, I know we're at least 20 plus.
Okay. Excellent. So more there, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Excellent. And just a quick circle back onto the audit solution you're mentioning too. I know it's kind of earlier on in your process there as well, but that's something that ShipHawk added over the last couple of years, and the reason being, it really closes the loop on shipping costs, because you can rate shop, you can try to reduce shipping costs, but if you're not going back to the carriers and holding them responsible for, they said they would meet this SLA and they didn't meet it, they're liable to give you some money back and some concessions there. And so that's a really kind of key closing the loop on not just going line by line and not having an associate manually processing, this order should cost this, we were billed for this, we're gonna do that all in one platform, central platform for you guys. So
yeah, I don't want to say this because I don't want you to increase my rate, but it definitely paid for itself, like that first month. I mean, just and we had someone dedicate a lot of hours to just going through invoices and going through shipping documents and just matching things up and a whole bunch of Excel sheets. Now the audit tool just brings up everything, highlights everything, and just you can submit claims from within the application. So it saves a lot of time and a lot of effort, and like I said, just kind of it paid for itself very quickly.
Excellent. That is the goal. All right, so let's talk a little about benefits too. So we've talked about the challenges, we talked about the solution selected. Let's now go into the high level benefits. We can get more specific too. And Justin, I'm going to have a couple questions for you. I've been not picking on you as much here, but I got some questions for you coming as well. So Samir, if you can talk about maybe the high level benefits and rather talk about like each solution separately. We can dive into each, but let's talk about kind of the whole power of the integrated end-to-end solution. You got NetStock, you have it feeding to NetSuite, you have that feeding to ShipHawk, you got everything from the planning to the execution kind of all in one. So what are those specific benefits that you've seen, Samir, from your perspective?
I mean, the short answer is we were able to increase our service levels and decrease our inventory. I mean, that's kind of the main goal for any organization. So NetStock really helped us get there, and we maintain those service levels with the right shipping platform. So so the long answer with NetStock, you want to set the service level and how much safety stock you have at each warehouse. So with that, you're kind of thinking of what's the right you're thinking of like what's the right amount of inventory in the specific warehouses for thousands of customers and vendors at the same time. So NetStock allowed us to manage our safety stock by setting kind of our service levels, saying, hey, we want 99% or 95% or whatever that percentage is. Incorporate vendor lead times at the same time. Incorporate supplier risk, like what's their fill rate? They're good at 90% or 95% or 80%. And then how do we apply our forecast? And so with all those different type of attributes put into one, NetStock automatically calculates, hey, this is how much inventory of this product you should have at this specific warehouse. And so we're being a lot more proactive instead of reactive. Oh, we have a stock out. Well, then a stock out means a loss of sale. But now we're having NetStock is helping us say, okay, look at this area, look at this specific product in this warehouse. And not all warehouses are similar. Like people like very bright color cars in Miami, and you don't see that in say Minnesota. I mean, so it's we want again have the right product in the right place for the right customer. And so we became very good at planning. And then became very collaborative with our vendors, because our vendors are like, okay, we want to service you better. What do we need to look at? So we became very collaborative with our vendors and saying, okay, here's our forecast. This is what we need. This is kind of the, our timeframes and what have you. On the ShipHawk side, well, ShipHawk actually, the audit too and some of our shipping costs allowed, kind of raised a red flag of our stocking levels. So when our shipping costs went up, we're like, okay, we have everything we need at the right, we're not having stockouts nationally, but why are we spending more on shipping? And then we found out, okay, we're putting product in different warehouses that were further on. So they're not necessarily the product at that primary warehouse for that customer. It was, let's say the customer was in Florida, and Florida ran out of the specific products. We had to ship from New York. Yes, we didn't have a stock out. Yes, we probably got there in like within the service level, but now we have higher shipping costs because we're shipping it from a lot further. So with ShipHawk audit and with NetStock collaboratively, it allows our supply chain team and our warehouse operations teams to put the product in the right place for optimal. Again, I keep hounding on speed, service, and selection, but optimal service levels and not having to put too much labor hours trying to figure all this out.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Excellent. And Justin, maybe I'm gonna ask on you to pick up some of the stuff that Samir was talking about, and specifically with reducing inventory levels. Can you talk through how NetStock can help enable this? Because obviously, it's this thing that's super appealing. Okay, of course we want to reduce inventory levels, less carrying costs, all that kind of stuff. But it's really hard to achieve, especially with the complexity that Fellers has across all these different warehouses and all these different colors, all these different SKUs. So you can talk through how to reduce inventory levels specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Samir did a fantastic job of really describing ultimately the foundational principles of what NetStock is doing and how we separate ourselves from, the basic MRP calculations that are running within an ERP like NetSuite, for example. One of the first things that we do is making sure that the customer understands that every item that they have by location has a different level of importance, and we need to highlight that. So we run a multi-level classification engine on every single item at every single location, looking at both the importance level from a value perspective, as well as volume, units that are turning, to make sure that we have a true understanding and gauge of how important the items are. Think of it as the Pareto principle, that 80-20 principle. We may need to focus on those top 20% because that's where 80% of your business is going to come from. And once that's done, as Samir mentioned, now we're going to make some targeted metrics or goals for each of the items found in those different classification matrices, and make sure that we're targeting the right level of inventory through sophisticated safety stock calculations for each item, and understanding that we want to have enough of the good stuff, not too much of the stuff that's just there kind of filling in a few of the gaps. And usually where we separate ourselves and where we're bringing that inventory down is most organizations are coming in with kind of a one-size-fits-all approach to their inventory by location, and setting a very static safety stock level, a measure in days, without really going through much of a deep or multi-leveled approach to evaluating their importance and what those levels, service levels, fill rates should be for each one of those. And once we run through that, typically we see the proper allocation of investment of capital to the right items, and really start bringing down that over allocation to the items that don't have as much impact to the business's bottom line.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. All right, Justin, actually, since you're on a roll here, I'm gonna keep going with you. And Samir talked about some of this too, but maybe you can just expand on it a little bit, which is, how is NetSuite going to help customers, not just like Fellers, but other customers to improve their forecasting? And why is forecasting important? Now we've talked through this, but like maybe just taking a step back, why is that so important?
Yeah, I mean, typically we see statistical averages being brought in where they're taking a chunk of sales history and just looking for a moving average and setting a static safety stock level in a number of days, whether that be 15 or 30, and really just applying that across the board. And where NetStock is going to help, and where we're going to separate ourselves, is the ability to run that sales history, that transactional data, through a very sophisticated world-class forecast engine that's going to take a tournament approach and run multiple different models over the history of every single item. Once we can overlay that, we're going to look for the statistically most accurate forecast and apply that model. So we're going to bring a lot of sophistication to the forecasting, making sure that that gets significantly more accurate. And even better so is then we're going to continue to do that repeatedly every single month as new information is brought in to make sure that we're maintaining the right forecast model for every single item at every single stocking location, ultimately optimizing what level of inventory you should have and making sure you've got the replenishment recommendations coming through for the right quantities at the right place at the right time.
Excellent, excellent. And actually, I'm going to interject a question. We're getting a few questions in the Q&A, but I think this is a very relevant one. And Justin, this is you're saying it, but I think without specifically saying it, it's going to be a question probably for you, Samir. But Justin, feel free to interject too. Which is, did you consider NetSuite's demand planning, supply allocation, MRP modules, and if so, what were the decision points of why NetStock was chosen over those? Which obviously, just like NetSuite WMS, sounds like you looked at the solutions within NetSuite, and that's always the goal. Like, at the end of the day, try to use the solutions in NetSuite if you're buying NetSuite. But if you find a limitation, so Samir, any thoughts on that?
No, 100%. We tried it for we tried it for a few months, almost a year, because we wanted to try to ensure that are we using this correctly. Just the complexity of what we were looking at, kind of like what Justin was saying, is we needed a more comprehensive solution. We didn't want all the stock, all the SKUs in a single warehouse all the time. And so with that and kind of again, the complexities of how our supply chain team was trying to determine what's the best stocking levels at each of the different warehouses, we knew we had to use a different solution.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And Justin, anything you would add to that as far as why you see customers turn to you guys over the inbox tools of the NetSuite?
Yeah, I think from an ERP perspective, NetSuite is a fantastic system of record. It is a transactional system. That is where they excel and help you with the financial evaluation of your organization. From the operational side, they will all come in and tell you that they will bring in the good, they will bring in the foundational characteristics of some of those processes, but still come up short to the better and best. And as things start to increase in complexity and size, the good no longer quite cuts it. And so, we're going to move you from, establishing at the item level 15 days of safety stock. That's for the item across the board, irregardless of locations. And we're going to bring in that next level of sophistication, move to the better, best viewpoint, where we're going to evaluate all that in detail by item, by location, consistently reevaluating that for them. So you never have to rethink. You don't have to go back and evaluate your safety stocks. That's being done every single day. So it's a good, better, best look. NetSuite's MRP, that's going to work if you've got a relatively new, young operation managing maybe a single warehouse, a couple hundred SKUs, and it's not very complex. But once you start growing and you really need something to scale, that's where a certified partner like Netstock or ShipHawk is able to come in, utilize our connections and our relationship with NetSuite to help organizations move it to the next level.
Yeah, so I mean, a real life example of this is, we had too much color in one warehouse that we thought we needed, and it meets the current demand. But then there was another warehouse that was constantly had a quick run of a certain color. So instead of buying more product, NetStock, again, going through all the algorithms, just recommended, hey, move this product from this warehouse to the other warehouse. So you don't have to buy anything, just move it from one warehouse to another, which was super helpful. Like before, it'd be like, oh, we ran out, let's buy more. So in this case, we're supplying ourselves within our network.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And Samir, I probably should ask this too, but how many SKUs does Fellers have? This was a question that came in through the Q&A. How many SKUs are you guys managing at any given point in time?
At about 30,000.
Okay.
SKUs in-house, and then there are a few more from a direct dropship perspective, but 30,000 in-house.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, let's shift gears here and kind of last major section, which is the lessons learned. I'm sure everything went perfect, the first time around. But hindsight's always 2020. So Samir, first to you, now you have this experience under your belt, and it sounds like you tried to use the in-the-box solutions of the NetSuite and then graduated into other solutions. what advice can you give a company that's kind of in the same shoes that you were in, just going live with NetSuite, now you're trying to use the in the box tools. Any thoughts around kind of advice you'd have even for yourself if it were a few years ago?
I would have started off with ShipHawk instead of doing the migration later. That would have helped. But no, I mean, you get, again, if you're NetSuite has to have a solution for all their, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of customers. So it is a one size fits all. If you see yourself like, hey, instead of changing your business processes to meet NetSuite, it's good to just manage and say, okay, we don't want to change our major business processes, and this is a competitive advantage for us, or it's our mantra, like our service levels. Utilize something else like ShipHawk or a NetStock to help you with that, with those business processes that are unique to your organization. So yeah, I mean, that's why we struggled a little bit with NetSuite's warehouse management. Some of the uniqueness, again, for our specific situation, it almost raised a negative attitude for the different warehouses that weren't on NetSuite. It became like a 4-letter word eventually. And so we had to quickly turn that mindset around. And so hence why we moved from NetSuite's WMS to ShipHawk's WMS, again, specifically for kind of our work process and how we pick and pack.
Yeah, makes sense. So, and we always say this too, if somebody's evaluating, ShipHawk and NetSuite WMS, they're evaluating a bike and a car. They can both get you places, but it really comes down to how far are you trying to go, and ultimately how long do you want to take? And again, like they're not the same solutions by design, even though obviously we work in the NetSuite ecosystem. So that's great context. Samir, question for you specifically. This came into the Q&A, and I think it's probably good time to bring it up. Obviously not all your warehouses are the same footprint. They're not the same size. They're not the same volume. There's some metros that are going to be bigger than others. How is the process the same within each warehouse? And then how is it different? And how has ShipHawk supported this process overall?
Yeah, that's also a complexity I didn't kind of mention before, but you're right. All of our warehouses are different sizes. So we can't stock all 30,000 SKUs at all the warehouses or meet every single demand at each of the different warehouses. So, some of our larger warehouses like Chicago, yes, we have everything. But some of our smaller warehouses, again, kind of having that still same neighborhood feel, are only, going to be able to effectually stock like 5,000 SKUs well. And so that also attributes to kind of the supply chain planning is like, well, we have limited space. There's only so many bins we have. What's most important to meet that local environment? So NetStock really helped us on understanding the footprint. WMS helped us understand where to put all the products, so there's less walking throughout the warehouse. But then NetStock really helped us understanding what product needs to go where.
Awesome. Yeah, makes sense. Perfect sense. And that's where the two solutions just complement each other, especially with NetSuite as the backbone. Couple questions came in around ROI, and one question specifically for freight audit. You said, hey, it kind of paid for itself. It sounds like there's a couple other questions around NetSuite WMS versus ShipHawk WMS. How did you guys think about ROI and the return on investment? Obviously, you're still in the implementation phases of getting the rest of the 20 warehouses live with ShipHawk, but can you talk through how you as the CIO were really focused on that return on investment?
For the audit tools, how much are we getting back from our vendors for missed shipments or mishandling or insurance claims, and time spent on trying to get that. So that was a pretty straightforward one. Those were like hard calculations or hard benefits to realize, or like not hard, but like tangible benefits that were realized. And then for the WMS side, we did have like tangible benefits with the time it took, and then you also have some of the soft benefits. So with the tangible benefits, it's like, okay, how long does it take to pick a product and ship it? So we kind of timed it with NetSuite's WMS. We did kind of an analytic study of like, okay, go pick it. How long is it taking you? Now with ShipHawk's WMS, go run through the same cycle. How long does it take you? How long does it take a new person, a new associate up and running? So some of the benefits that we saw, especially with ShipHawk's WMS, like we had someone by day 2 fully take care of themselves. Because again, the scanner is kind of doing everything. We just kind of say, here's a scanner, here where all the printers are, here's your cart to pick everything. Yes, there were a lot of questions on day 1. Day 2, he was off on his own. And so that is a tangible benefit that is important, especially again when you go through warehouse associates. So that time to become fully efficient was very important. And then walking, just how much efficiency were we getting on just product placement? We wanted obviously a lot of our fast movers near our ship station, as opposed to like some of our slower moving products towards the back of the warehouse.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about now Netstock. A couple questions specific to Netstock. And Justin, I have one question for you, and then Samir, one question for you. The first one, Samir, I'll ask you first is, what was that timeline to go from NetSuite's demand planning and MRP process to now you're fully operational on Netstock for those 30,000 SKUs? What did that timeline look like?
Yeah, I mean, you can go as fast or as slow as you want. I think we particularly wanted to go a little slower. So instead of a big bang, we started off with a couple of warehouses, then we did regionally, and then we implemented for the rest of the warehouse. So it depends on how you want to, how quickly you want to go. So it could be anywhere from, an 8-week implementation to 8-month implementation. We were kind of in the, in between that, but it really depends on how comfortable and how much logic and how many algorithms you want to put into Netstock.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. And Justin, a question for you that came in, and obviously, the vast amount of data that Netstock is going to have is just, ripe for the picking when it comes to AI and be able to process a large amount of data and really find those key points. Can you talk about, how Netstock is, how AI is changing the way that demand planners manage their supply chains and how Netstock is approaching AI overall? Obviously, we can't, have the full webinar talking about this in some aspect at least.
Yeah, we probably go on for quite a bit of time looking into it in detail, but AI is the key. That is the buzz right now, and everyone is looking for how systems are going to help them become more efficient, more accurate, and more strategic. And so, Netstock comes in, and right from the gate, it's already going through and running those forecasting algorithms, safety stock level calculations, and really driving you towards what are those optimal inventory levels and what are those target fill rates that you have. And once we start doing that, we take a lot of that rudimentary and manual processes off of the individuals that were running through that, and now we want to take it and make them efficient and make them strategic. So we're running through all of that, and now with just 1 or 2 simple clicks of a mouse, the system's going to be able to output recommendations of actions an individual should take to help move their organization towards meeting those goals and objectives. Where do you have too much on order that you need to reduce? What is the financial impact that's going to have on the organization? Where are there potential misses coming in the future? And what recommendations does the system give for actions that they can take? And the best way that I've explained it to people is, I used to be able to come in on a Monday morning, open up Netstock, click on the opportunity engine, as we call it, and click on 2 or 3 of those recommendations that it could have. And within a matter of seconds, I already have a workflow for my day, giving me essentially exactly the financial impact I'm going to have on the organization, reducing over orders, catching up on orders that are falling behind, and making sure that I'm strategically going after exactly what our organization needs to meet those levels. So that's one example of AI, plus just having an assistant in your pocket that can explain everything that's happening in the system and the impact on the organization and recommendations on how to mitigate those issues that do come up. Just fantastic capabilities of AI within Netstock to help you become as efficient and profitable as you can be.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay, just one last question, then we're gonna wrap here. And I actually appreciate somebody asked this because I had in my questions to ask you, Samir, and then I forgot to ask you, which is, okay, what's next? Obviously, you're live and operational, but what is the next phase look like, and what's the next milestones and frontiers on these projects?
I'm still catching my breath with all the implementation changes we're doing here. So
fair. You earned it. Vacation, right?
Yeah, I wish. No, just to be, I mean, kind of like what Justin was saying is how do we implement uh, AI into our processes? We still are very human driven from a supply chain perspective, which is good, and that actually helped us with adoption. Some of our supply chain team was very worried about, hey, this thing is going to do its own thing, and it's going to order a whole bunch of product that we don't want. And so we know that NetStock just provides recommendations, and so you can kind of review those recommendations and then hit the button to order or transfer or anything like that. Now we want to take it a step further. Is like how do we continue to reduce our inventory without sacrificing our service levels from an A, B, and C standpoint. And so it's kind of that, and doing a little bit more with ShipHawk on the WMS side. How do we make our warehouse team more effective, either through warehouse dashboards, kind of or tracking or KPIs that they can look at real time in order for them to make adjustments during the day, as opposed to let's look at your KPIs a month later, and at that point you've lost a month of productivity. So we want to do a little bit more, be a little bit more agile with our warehouse operations from a day-to-day perspective.
Excellent. Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. All right. Well, with that, if you have further questions, and I appreciate all the questions, we didn't get a chance to answer all of them probably, but please drop us a note. You can learn more at shiphawk.com, and there's NetSuite's website as well. Obviously, happy to have a deeper conversation. So with that, I want to thank Justin for his time and sharing NetSuite's point of view, and Samir, ultimately, I want to really thank you for highlighting the story here. Obviously, there's a lot more depth here, and I'm not envious of your role or just the complexities that are introduced across this massive supply chain and warehouse footprint. But your that vacation is well earned. So,
well, it also feels good. Like when you're kind of in the middle of it, and you're like, oh man, how do I solve for this? And then you do achieve kind of the goals that you set off with with transportation warehouse and with supply chain and NetStock. Like you're seeing the benefits of that. You're like, wow, I actually got where needed to go. So thank you for ShipHawk and NetStock helping my job or making me look better, and that's or making our teams a lot more effective.
yeah, appreciate that. Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and we'll be sure to drop this in your inboxes with the recording, and please reach out anytime. So thanks so much, both of you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.